Hi there, my name is Jonathan Van Elslander. I'm a writer and ecologist. I'm originally from Winnipeg. And today I'm going to read the first couple minutes of my story, The River, which will be published in FreeFall this fall. The River. He liked best on days like this to move like the river. His direction was a track cut into the earth thousands of years ago. He was the rain brought back to the mountains, retracing their steps, washing over the same places they had been before. His energy flowed and filled the valley as the rain poured and poured. He moved like a river until he stopped. He stopped with genuine intent and looked around at the trees. He noticed the rain had not abated, but he was surprised that his mind had noticed this at all. It was and had been raining so hard that there was no reasonable concept of whether or not any rain had abated. A change in intensity of 10 or 20% in either direction meant nothing. It was not a normal cold winter rain, but a warm and shocking kind of rain, and because of this he had quickly melted and poured himself with sweat under the rubber pants and jacket. Now, after a few hours, having given up on the jacket's hood, his old hat saturated, his hair saturated, the skin of his face and hands saturated, but also the drenched hidden skin of his body saturated, he and the rain had become one. There was no osmosis, no steam rising, no pressure gradient at all between him and anything else. With no atmospheric need for the water, there was no evaporation to steal the warmth from his skin. If it weren't for the linear and unidirectional nature of his day, he felt he may as well have dumped his clothes on the ground, leaving them to be returned to later, and marched through the bush wearing only his crew's vest. Naked, he would no longer be moving along the ground through the rain and the air, but instead be ensconced in it all. He stopped for no discernible reason, the same reason that stopped him about this time every morning. A tangled branching corpus of reasons that was, even from quite close, seen only as a single mass. Thirst, aches, an instinctual response to the day's first violent gust of wind, a bad flashback, unexplainable vivid memories, an unexpected start from an animal, an odd bird call. A territorial squirrel, a budding existential crisis, an imperceptible passing daytime meteor flying overhead, a metaphysical blip in the rotation of the earth. All of these things happening only ever just strongly enough to interrupt his momentum, but all passing quickly enough that he never nailed down or even tried to determine what it was that had caused him to stop. He took a long and unsatisfying drink of water from his canteen. Today he had stopped with a crack in the rain, and for a moment or maybe a minute or maybe a long, long while, he stood still, the water running down his face and back and dripping off the brim of his old hat, no more distracting him than the movement of the blood in his veins. There was not much wind today despite the storm, and no tree in that forest had shattered on its return to the ground. From where he stood, outwards in all directions, were perfect columns of western hemlock and Douglas fir far over his head, and only the occasional frail hemlock or red cedar biding their time in the dark glow of green under the canopy. The canopy above him, which was now almost exactly 100 years old, 100 years since his lawless forebears had sent the old ruling giants careening down to the river, was an almost perfect filter for the sky. But the water still dripped down to him, delayed by the world above, a considerable portion of it sucked up by the mosses and ferns building their own habitat in the needles and the branches of the trees. He felt, maybe for the first time, unsettled in his own habitat down below. Coalesced with the rain, he felt a perfect quiet of the woods, which of course had a power that deafened him as he scanned the understory for anything. He found only sword ferns and a spare huckleberry bush. From the silence he felt rising a great hum which seemed to resonate perfectly with the light swaying of the crowns above him and with the heavy water on his face and in his stomach. He looked up for the first time that day and made an effort to read something in the sky which had been punishing the abused earth with a gathering acceleration all week. He saw nothing that indicated the source of the hum, but he felt it was rising in volume at the same rate the rain was quickening. He looked back to the dark ground and chose to listen closely to the growing drone, which after some long time, what he consciously wondered may be the longest break from work he'd ever taken besides eating lunch, he began to feel that the humming was emanating both from within him and from the very turning of the earth. That's all I'll read today. Thank you very much.